Well, welcome today. We made a special appeal to nature, not to rain. So you notice there's some sun out there for you. They listened to us today. I'm Ann Lippel. I'm the chair of the Senior Citizen Advisory Committee. And I want to thank you all for coming. We have a very exciting program today. If you noticed, the banner for our conference is called, "Do you want to be a part of changing the senior landscape, senior housing landscape?" All the studies and surveys we have done have told us that the key factor for people who are over the age of 55 in Montclair is housing and housing options. And so we've assembled a panel of experts today to help us explore what's reasonable, what's doable, what's incremental in terms of getting to the housing goals that we all desire. The SCAC has been around for almost 30 years, and we were created by the township for a very specific purpose. The slide has the specific goals of the SCAC enumerated, and I'd like to read them to you. The SCA mission and purpose. The SCAC is appointed by the township to provide the council with information regarding the concerns of Montclair residents on the needs, wishes, and status of its senior citizens, to assess and make recommendations on the services provided, and to recommend and request funding and assist the council in development and implementation of these services, and to act as advocate in the interest of all senior residents and dissemination of information to the public. So today, the SCAC is fulfilling more than a few of its stated goals. We've identified the key issue, that is senior retiree housing. We are here to educate you, as well as members of the council and professional staff, about what is possible. And hopefully, at the end of the day, we will have a menu of new ideas to build upon going forward. But we'll have more about that in a few minutes. As chair of the SCAC, one of my responsibilities is to monitor the changing landscape for Montclair seniors. And 2017 has proven to be a very productive year. Change is happening thanks to the enormous effort of Katie York, who is our director of the township's Division of Senior Services / Lifelong Montclair. And this unit is part of the Montclair Department of Health and Human Services. She has assembled a collaborative team of 32 lifelong Montclair partners. And with their cooperation and effort, we have been able to see the landscape changing. In the spring of 2017, the township passed a resolution affirming its unanimous support for the establishment of a comprehensive senior center. The town then delegated the task of investigating appropriate and available facilities and making appropriate recommendations to the SCAC and Katie York. We have been hard at work developing scope of service and facilities use documents and shopping them around. The investigation is ongoing and we are making solid progress. But even with the absence of a bricks and mortar solution, Montclair seniors do not lack for social and educational programs. At satellite locations like Edgemont Park House, the Dewdrop Inn at the Wally Choice Center, the senior space at the Montclair Library, AIM programs here at the Hub, and the YMCA of Montclair, the volume of activity is quite comprehensive. Montclair retirees are excellent and discerning consumers of programs. The new question for Montclair retirees is not what is there to do today, but which of the competing programs gets my attention today. So, from a planning perspective, the town council has also taken a giant leap forward. Just this fall, the council approved a 171-page age-friendly community action plan This plan was submitted to the AARP Network of Age-Friendly Cities and the World Health Organization Global Network of Age-Friendly Cities and Community. Montclair is one of the two organizations, two townships in New Jersey that have the designation of age-friendly. This is aspirational, and we are working very hard to make sure that the needs of our retirees and seniors are met. The action plan, which is a multi-year blueprint for improving quality of life, identifies 8 domains of livability, including transportation, street safety, respect and inclusion, and most importantly, housing. The plan represents the culmination of effort between the government of Montclair, the SCAC, and all the 32 lifelong Montclair partners. We are blessed with talent in this town, and we are hoping that by bringing all of these talented people together, we will get closer to finding the solutions that we need. 2017 also saw the establishment of the Senior Citizen Transportation Roundtable to oversee the operation of the outsourced senior bus. Some of you came by the senior bus this morning. The senior bus is now operated by Meadowlink, a nonprofit Bergen County transit provider. Since May 2017, when the new management for the bus was officially launched, rider satisfaction has been overwhelmingly positive. Riders have especially reported liking 2 things: the fact that a bus dispatcher can schedule a pickup rider at his or her home instead of at a bus stop, and the fact that Wednesday is reserved as a shopper's shuttle to the local supermarket. The most up-to-date senior bus schedule and brochure is in your swag bags. Take the bus and go green. Thanks to the generous funding by Partners for Health, we have another transportation option, and it's called Seniors in Transit, or SIT. This is a discount voucher program with local taxi companies cooperating and giving us a 50% discount on taxi rides. And you can go anywhere. You can go to Newark Airport, you can go to the mall, or you can go locally. If you can afford it, you can go. The SIT voucher sales in 2017 have already exceeded expectations, and grant funding for continuation of SIT funding for 2017 has been awarded. A new cooperative effort with the Montclair Business Improvement District has helped institutionalize a Montclair Senior of the Month program. This program acknowledges the community service of many of our most outstanding residents who happen to have been born before 1950. Next, the Mill. Thanks again to Partners for Health, and in cooperation with the Montclair Public Library, the Montclair Adult School, and the Montclair Art Museum, the Montclair Institute for Lifelong Learning, or MIL, a free adult educational program for seniors, has become a cornerstone element in our age-friendly initiatives. Since its inception in 2015 and up to the fall of 2017, the MIL has recorded over 3,633 registrations. The only persistent complaint I have heard about this program is from folks who have gotten closed out of courses. Kudos to Montclair seniors whose thirst for intellectual and artistic stimulation is unsurpassed. And you will have a chance to sample and perhaps buy some of the artwork from this program. The Partners for Health will be staffing a table where they will be showing note cards that were designed by Mill students. Buy your Christmas cards early this year. And finally, both the SCAC and the Division of Senior Services have partnered with initiatives both townwide and beyond to improve the landscape for seniors, including but not limited to pedestrian safety, obesity, diabetes management. How many of you attended the Mayor's Challenge on wellness? Food justice. We have a mobile farm stand, and in fact today, the last day of the season for our mobile farm pop-up stand is in Hillside parking lot because of Seniorama. So when you're finished here at the end of the day, check it out and get some locally produced produce at a very good price. And also anti-ageism. How many of you were able to attend the AIM 3-day film series on age and ageism? Also, home safety and technology literacy. I could go on for a very long time, but we are short of time. This all demonstrates that by working together, we can provide a rich cultural and social network for everyone. And in the case of Montclair, using the words of a famous book on the subject, it takes a township. And in this effort, no one is busier than Katie York. And she's not in the room for me even to hear this, but kudos to Katie. So, to be sure, we all have much to celebrate as 2017 comes to close, but a piece of unfinished business. We know that 1 out of 8 residents of Montclair is over 65. And since 2013, our seniors and retirees have told us that housing is the paramount issue of concern for Montclair residents who are retired or retiring. Today, we will hear a team of experts answering questions like, what is the reality on the ground? Are there creative ways to repurpose our existing housing? Can we accommodate the needs of our retirees with stock answers? Are there programs to provide financial relief to cash-strapped retired homeowners? And are there opportunities for new coalitions? Montclair is not alone in its preoccupation with this issue. Americans are retiring at the rate of 10,000 a day. How to keep these valued citizens safe and happy is our challenge. But unlike other townships with large plots of undeveloped land, the Montclair footprint is relatively dense. In this town, as with other first-ring suburbs, we will have to think outside the box to come up with a viable plan for long-term housing for our retired residents. So new partnerships have to be formed. Housing security is not merely an issue of convenience or status. A study by the California-based Kaiser Permanente company has correlated housing insecurity with declining health among seniors. This correlation has led to some health insurers concerned with their bottom line to partner with local developers to build sustainable neighborhood housing for seniors. This is the cornerstone of an overall aging in place initiative. This type of collaboration could be the underpinning of a win-win model for aging in place. Insurance companies and health foundations partnering with developers to build sustainable homes for retired citizens. All my friends agree, and many of you do too, we prefer to age in place to being warehoused in nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Keeping seniors and retirees in a neighborhood where they retain their social network, their medical and service providers as they age, is no doubt a better path to both physical and mental health security. Aging in place is what we seek. So how do we get where we need to go? We know that communities thrive when neighborhoods are diverse in use and population. That's why we love Montclair. But in our case, diversity is meant to mean age diversity. We have to take steps to make sure that our over 55 population stays here. We know that sustainable communities of the future have to be green in construction as well as location. That is designed to reduce dependence upon fossil fuel by supporting pedestrian and bike traffic, providing access to public transportation, to open spaces and shops. We know that thoughtful design can reinforce respect for our neighbors, encourage fellowship and caring communities, and create pleasing architectural landscapes. Construction is not the only answer. Building integrated neighborhoods is. I would like now to introduce Alicia Robinson, who is going to introduce our keynoter, Allan Mallach. Allan Mallach is an urban developer and a person who has spoken out about housing repurposing for many years. He is right now the Investor Community Bank keynoter for us, because Investor Community Bank has helped us to fund his being here. So first, Alicia. One piece of housekeeping. We want you to ask questions. We want you to ask questions of both our keynoter and our panelists, but we want you to write them down. In your white swag bags, there's a folder that looks like this, or a facsimile of this. In it, you'll find an empty index card. You all have pens in one of those swag bags as well. Please, if you have any questions, write them down, and when we have the keynote finished, I'll ask you to put your questions up and somebody will collect them. Okay, thank you very much for your endurance.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Investors Bank is honored to sponsor this morning's keynote address. As a local community bank, we are committed to helping this town and its residents and businesses grow and prosper. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Allan Mallach, a senior fellow at the Center for Community Progress in Washington, D.C. He brings more than 50 years of experience in the areas of urban revitalization, neighborhood stabilization, and housing provision, including his extensive work in challenging exclusionary policies and advocating for affordable housing. His reputation as an expert in his field is known in communities throughout this state, in towns and cities across our country, as well as in professional circles and local community forums around the world. Whether as a scholar, practitioner, writer, or advocate, he is sought after for his perspectives, knowledge, and values in areas of community planning and economic development. Throughout his career, Mr. Mallach has held a number of public and private sector positions, including serving as the Director of Housing and Economic Development for the City of Trenton and as a non-resident senior fellow with the Brookings Institution. Currently, he teaches in the Graduate City Planning Program at the Pratt Institute in New York City. He has spoken on housing and urban issues in the United States, Europe, Israel, and Japan. His published works encompass several books, including the title, A Decent Home, Planning, Building, and Preserving Affordable Housing, as well as numerous articles, research papers, and policy reports. His newest book, Divided City, Poverty and Prosperity in the New Urban America, is scheduled for release in the spring of 2018. Mr. Mallach is a member of the College of Fellows of the American Institute of Certified Planners and holds a BA degree from Yale University. He also pursues his love for Italian opera, on which he has written 2 major books, and he currently resides in Roosevelt, New Jersey. This morning, Mr. Mallach is here to provide us with new information, as well as to challenge our assumptions on community planning and development. Today, 1 out of 4 households in Montclair has a senior who is 65 years or older, and an additional 10% of our residences include individuals between the ages of 60 and 64. These facts leave our community facing 2 major challenges. First, we need to ensure that our senior citizens can continue to live here. And second, we must help future seniors fund housing that better meets their needs and limited resources. Allan Mallach will explore options that can assist our community in meeting the current and future housing needs of these senior citizens. His suggestions range from programs to help people age in place, to different ways of using the present housing supply, to strategies for creating new and affordable housing. So without further ado, I welcome to Montclair, and it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Allan Mallach.
Thank you, Alicia. And she didn't mention my most important qualification for talking about this is the fact that I am one. And so when I talk about senior citizens, I can sort of talk from personal experience. I've been there. So, age-friendly Montclair, and I didn't know what Ann mentioned, that the town council has actually developed a plan around being age-friendly. I didn't know that. I wish I had. I would have read it. I suspect a lot of people are thinking about a lot of the things that I may talk about, which is good, because everybody's got to be involved in this thing. So today, first I'm going to talk a little bit. I'll throw out some numbers and give a little background, and then I'm going to talk about, again, the three basic issues: how to help people stay in their homes, how to create more housing options in the community overall, and how to make Montclair an age-friendly environment. Because when we talk about housing, we're really talking about all three of those issues. Okay, as Alicia mentioned, 1 out of 8 Montclair residents is 65 or older. Now, just one thing, that is not, if you look at the country as a whole, that is not a particularly high number. Actually, it's a little bit less than the national average. So Montclair, again, is very much kind of in the middle when it comes to the number of senior citizens, the size of the older population. But this is interesting, because Montclair's older population is very heavily younger older population. This is much more skewed than nationally. There are very few people in Montclair who are old. There are some, but a few hundred, but it's not a huge number. But what's really interesting is if you compare the number of people in Montclair who are 55 to 64 to the number who are over 65, there are more people in Montclair who are in that 10-year group than in the entire age bracket of 65 and up. Now that's very different. Nationally, the two groups are about the same size. Actually, they're somewhat more 65 and overs compared to 55 and 64. So Montclair has this huge bulge coming along, which could mean that starting in about 5-10 years, the senior citizen population of Montclair is going to start going up very rapidly, and could, by 15 years down the road, could be, instead of being 12 to 13%, could be as much as 20%. Again, that's not guaranteed. Could be more, could be less, but that is certainly highly possible. Now, as Alicia mentioned, nearly 1 out of 4 households in Montclair contains somebody over 65. Now, interestingly, relatively small percentage, again, by national standards, of Montclair's older people are single and live alone. Again, but consistent with national standards, they are mostly women, because as men have long since learned, women live longer than men. It's unfortunate for the men, but that's the way it is. But also, nearly 2/3 of Montclair older households are homeowners, which again is higher than the national. No, it's about par. So we're talking about a population that is still mostly in couples, as you can see all the way on the left. Over half of Montclair's older people are in couples. About another maybe 25 to 30% are single people, and the rest are a kind of a little bit of lots of different things. parents living with younger children, in-laws, other relatives, non-family members, there are a few sort of sharing arrangements and things like that. But it's mostly couples, but a lot of singles as well. Well, how do they compare? One thing we know is the senior citizens in Montclair, on the whole, earn a lot less than the non-senior citizens. They spend more for housing than either as owners or renters than do most of the people in Montclair as a percentage of their income. So there are some real housing needs because Montclair is an expensive city. Taxes are high, costs are high, housing prices are high, and a lot of older people, when they retire, their income drops off and they start to have housing cost burdens that they didn't have when they were younger and making more money. So there are some definite issues here. But again, Montclair is not unique. This is something that is shared. There are a lot of places in the United States and a lot of places, particularly in North Jersey, where we see very similar patterns, whether it's a place like Westfield or Maplewood or South Orange. It's the same. This is part of a larger picture. So what then do people want? Now, this is an interesting thing. A couple of years ago, the AARP did a big survey and asked people, older people, what are they looking for in the way of future housing options? Now, this is the most interesting thing. The overwhelming majority basically agreed with, in most cases strongly agreed with the question or the statement, what I'd really like to do is stay in my current residence for as long as possible. That's a very important proposition. The second thing is, so 88% of the people over 65 who answered the survey wanted to stay in their homes. 92% wanted to stay in the same community. And it was interesting, some of the things that people said, particularly, they like the community in most places, and I suspect this is all very much true of older people in Montclair. They like the community, they have friends nearby, many have family, and they want to be near the places they're familiar with and are used to going. You know, people have relationships with doctors, there's stores they like, there are libraries, there's a whole kind of both social and physical network that people become part of if they live in a community long enough. And most people want to keep that. And most people actually do stay in their communities. It's funny, we have an image, I think, in this country of kind of a constant, massive flow of older people from the Northeast to Florida, to North Carolina, to Arizona, to wherever. And it's true, some people, many people, do actually move. But it's not the dominant trend that some people think it is. And, you know, it's funny. A lot of that has to do because I think people see, you notice change more than you notice things staying the same. So if you have 100 people and say 10 of them move and 90 stay put, you focus on the 10 who move. So we tend to, I think, overestimate how much there really is a shift in the population of the senior citizens. But at the same time, there is a shift, and at least a lot of that is driven by the fact that some of the options that people may be looking for economically or physically are no longer available for them in their communities. Some people just can't stand northern winters, but that's different. There's no way for Montclair to fix that. So, though, actually, come to think of it, if you just wait long enough, it probably will fix itself. And nobody will want to go to Florida. But, so, if we want to help more people who live in Montclair who are older today or are going to be older in 5 or 10 or 15 years to stay in their homes and stay in the community? What should we be thinking about? And I think there are 3 basic issues: helping people stay in their homes, creating more housing options, and looking at the larger environment and how to make it more age-friendly. So I'm going to talk about each of those 3 and throw out a variety of ideas. Okay, first one. Okay, how to help people. The first thing is, one of the most common things that happens as one gets older is, again, you have 2 things going on. One thing is you are likely to have less money than you did before. And the second thing is you're likely to start developing physical limitations that you didn't have before. It's unfortunate, and I'm trying to fight it off for as long as I possibly can, but it's reality. So what that means, that a lot of people's homes need changes, need improvements, need modifications to make them more accessible, may need repairs, sometimes small things, sometimes large things. Depending on the income, the skills, the knowledgeability of the homeowner, or for that matter, the landlord, because it's not just about owner-occupied housing. These things can be dealt with easily, or they can't be dealt with at all. And one of the most important things that a community can do, either through the local government, through nonprofits, through others, is figure out ways to help people deal with adapting and repairing and maintaining their homes. Now, Montclair is a relatively affluent community, and even by comparison, say, to the elderly homeowners in a city like Philadelphia or Newark, where they may not literally have the money to do even the smallest repairs, most Montclair homeowners are not in that same situation. But there still are a lot of issues that come up. Do you have the money, say, to replace the roof? Do you have the money to replace a plumbing problem or an electrical problem? If you have the money, do you know a reliable contractor, or are you basically at the mercy of whomever? So what is a first step is to have a system to help people both with reliable information to make sure that they get work done for a fair price of decent quality, and where necessary, financial assistance. And now, obviously, there isn't a lot of government grant money kicking around these days. It's a reality. We know that. But one of the things, for example, that some communities have done is provide funds where, let's say, somebody needs some major repairs, and they make a loan to that person, which you don't have to pay while you live in the house, but if the house is sold down the road, then the loan gets paid back. So you have access to the money when you need it. And that is something, for example, the town of Montclair could create a program like that. Or perhaps the Essex County Improvement Authority or some other organization. It's very doable. So again, making sure that people have access to information, to reliable contractors to make sure that work gets done properly for a fair price, and secondly, providing the financial assistance for people who need it, so that nobody should be forced out of their homes because of the inability to make a repair that's needed to keep that home safe and habitable. That's sort of the kind of a basic proposition. One of the easier, actually, things that can be done to help make a community age-friendly. Number 2, this is harder, but it's important. Montclair has a lot of big houses on fairly good-sized lots. Montclair has quite a few cases where you have one person or 2 people living in a house that's much larger, especially people who once had a whole bunch of kids. finally got rid of them. And there they are, in the house by themselves. So, there are a lot of options, and some of these have to do with physical changes, some of these have to do with helping different types of arrangements be made. A lot of them have to do with making sure that the local regulations that govern these things permit the variety of things that can be done that can help older people stay in their homes. So the first one, and a lot of communities in New Jersey do this. Again, I have not looked at Montclair's ordinances and codes, and so I don't know whether they're permitted or not, so I'm not going to speak to that, so I'm going to talk generally. The first one is accessory apartments. Is the very simple that if you have a one-bedroom apartment, a modest one-bedroom apartment takes up roughly 600 to 800 square feet of floor space. Some of the houses, many of the houses in Montclair have 2,500, 3,000, 4,000 square feet of floor space. From a purely physical standpoint, it is often extremely easy to take that house and create an apartment inside that house, which is nobody can tell from the outside. And that could do a number of things. First, the simplest thing is it means that the person who lives in that house is now getting a source of income that they didn't have to help them pay their bills or maintain their property. Second, it means that you've created an apartment which perhaps, some senior living in the town who doesn't want to live in their 2,000 or 3,000 square foot house anymore and is looking for a modest, affordable apartment, not something in one of the new palaces that's being built, can get access to that. So you're killing two birds with one stone in a way that's virtually invisible as far as the rest of the community is concerned. You're increasing the income for the family who owns the house, and you're creating another option for an elderly typically a single person, but it could be a couple, to live in an affordable way in the community. Second, granny flats and cottages are kind of an expansion of that, and this is more complicated because you get into some issues of obviously permitting issues, plumbing issues, and other things. But this has been done quite a bit. You can see the pictures in other parts of the country where if the lot is large enough, put a small 1 or 2 bedroom house, 600, 800 square foot small house in the back of the house. Now, a lot of zoning ordinances don't permit it, and again, you'd have to look at plumbing issues. This tends to be more expensive and more complicated than simply creating a new apartment within the existing house. But it's something that represents an option, and again, because it's a more independent kind of living than living inside the same house, some people would prefer it. Home sharing. This is something I think probably quite a few people do this informally. I think there are probably other people who would like to do it, but are concerned about how are they going to find somebody that they really can trust and can rely upon and not get ripped off. And if, for example, I know my wife's, this is complicated, ex-mother-in-law, whom even after her first husband left the scene, she stayed friends with his mother. And she lived in Ridgewood, which is a town not unlike Montclair. And she lived to be, in her mid-90s. And for the last maybe quite 10 years of her life, she used to rent out a room to law students. And she would rent at a very reasonable price, very low price, but part of the deal was that they would help out. they weren't just coming to sleep there. They would help out. They would buy groceries. They would help fix meals. They would help clean up. They would do stuff that would make her life easier in this big old house. And that sort of thing, one person, that sort of thing, again, it makes a whole lot of sense. And you have to look and see whether there are any legal obstacles to that. You also have to, I think, to make that really work on a large scale, you really have to have some organization that takes responsibility basically for making the match, for checking out people, and so that if you're a senior citizen living in a house somewheres and you want to share it, but you don't know anybody in particular, they can send you somebody and they can say, we've checked this person out, this is reliable, you can even maybe get some kind of insurance to cover any risks or things like that, so that this becomes something that people have a high comfort level with and just works for everybody. Because I'm sure there are probably lots of people who would be very happy, especially a lot of both older people and younger people, who would be very happy to share a nice house in a nice neighborhood at have a bedroom of their own, but otherwise share the house at an affordable price. And again, so you're providing something that benefits the person who owns the house and something that's benefiting another person in terms of providing an additional housing option. So I think these are a variety of the options that can be used to help people stay in their homes and simultaneously creating more housing options. But it goes beyond that. When we talk about housing options, now, again, as I think Ann pointed out, Montclair is a fairly well-built-up community. Most of the development that's going to take place in Montclair over the next, for however many years, is not going to be, what you see if you go out further. It's not going to be what they call greenfield development, where you take some farm and put McMansions on it. It's going to be the redevelopment of a piece of land that's already being used for something or other. In some cases, it could be a parking lot. In some cases, it could be a smaller building that's replaced with a larger building and so forth. Now that's, by its nature, that means that Montclair is not going to grow explosively all that fast. The number of new housing units, new apartments and houses is going to be gradual and incremental. So you're not going to see thousands of new apartments happen overnight. Hundreds maybe, but not thousands. But I think this goes to a question of zoning and land use, because certainly there is demand for more housing to be built in Montclair. The biggest limiting factor on whether the housing gets built is the land use regulations. And so I think, without saying they're good, bad, or indifferent, I think what becomes important is to look at the land use regulations in the town and say, do they provide for a wide variety of options that would make sense for seniors? Whether it's rental housing, whether it's co-ops, whether it's relatively large-scale new developments, or whether it's things like, for example, now, some of you may think this is a good idea, some of you may think it's a terrible idea. But let's say there's a house in Montclair, of which there are quite a few, that has 4,000 square feet of floor space, and it's on a pretty large lot. Now, 4,000 square feet could be for a 4-unit apartment building. And it could look exactly like that house. Or it could even be that house. You may be even able to convert that house into a 4-unit apartment building and carefully put, some parking space in the back, well landscaped, so that cars don't offend the delicate sensitivities of the neighbors. And you could create more housing that, because it's likely to be relatively modest, it's not going to have all the bells and whistles of the new downtown apartment buildings. It's likely to rent for a somewhat more modest rent than the housing that's being built along Bloomfield Avenue. So I think we should look at the zoning of the town, look at the type of land configurations, and see where the existing shape of the community can be manipulated to create more housing options. I'm not talking about trying to change the physical or the visual character of the existing neighborhoods in the town. That would be a shame. But I think there are a lot of things you can do in terms of introducing more housing into the mix that would be appropriate for older people and would be, again, affordable to them. So that, along with looking at, are there areas like, underutilized areas, parking lots and so forth, that ought to be made available for more higher density development. So these are some of the housing options. But I think the important point is to remember, it goes beyond the housing itself. It's about the community. And I think this is where, and again, I think it's exciting that Montclair is already focusing its energies on the aspiration to become a truly age-friendly community. Because what being age-friendly means, and I've mentioned a few of the things. I mean, when coming up with ways to help people make repairs, coming up with ways to help people do home sharing, that's all part of being an age-friendly community, is helping people stay in their homes and providing more housing options. But it goes beyond that. I think it goes to questions of how walkable is the community, which gets into a lot of details. I mean, a lot of Montclair is a very walkable community, which is wonderful. But sometimes you even have to look at not just the basic shape of the place, but the details. Are the sidewalks wide enough? Are the sidewalks well maintained? Can people get into the buildings easily enough? So there's a lot of issues. Even something like the traffic signals. Is there enough time allowed when the traffic signal changes for people who may not be able to walk as fast as they used to cross before it turns red? So walkability is a lot of different things. There are lots of different services. I was pleased that, there's the senior transportation works. Interestingly, one of the odd benefits, I don't think it's when driverless vehicles become the norm, which, everybody I know who has anything to do with this stuff has already concluded they are coming. It's only, are we talking about 5 years or 10 years or what? But that's the only issue. So when that happens, I think that's going to open up some really great options in terms of demand-oriented transportation, because it's going to make it much more affordable to be running lots of little vans and buses, minibuses and things around the community if you don't have to pay for drivers. There's a downside of that. What happens to all those drivers' jobs? But if you look at it from one narrow lens, it could become a huge plus for people in the community. But there are lots of other services in terms of, cultural activities, educational activities, wellness, home care, you name it. One of the models that I think, and I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with this, and it would strike me that Montclair is just a natural for this model, which is what's come to be known as the village model. And it was started, many years ago, 20 or more years ago, I think, in Boston, where the original village, which is called the Beacon Hill Village, was created. And, you know, you look at what a village is. It's basically an organization that ties all these pieces together for people in a community. So in the Beacon Hill Village provides all of the services they provide free transportation, they create social events, they have wellness programs, learning, cultural, they provide volunteers to help people with things. They'll help somebody, you know, if need be, they'll be with somebody at a doctor's appointment to help them navigate the system. They provide referrals, they provide discounts on all kinds of services. They do a whole lot of things. And basically, families join. Individuals and families join. And for the one in Boston, again, the fees are what you see there. Again, it costs money to do all of this. They have a small paid staff and a lot of volunteers. But what's also appealing is that they provide, you know, as you can see on the slide, they have this very deeply discounted membership for older people in the community who are low and moderate income. And they make a point on their website of saying that anybody who gets the discounted membership, that information is kept strictly confidential, and there's absolutely no distinction in terms of services, availability, et cetera, regarding people's incomes. So I think, you know, a model like this as a vehicle for trying to coordinate all of the many moving parts that are involved in creating an age-friendly environment in a community is something well worth looking at. So that's basically my spiel. I think this is something, all of the things that I've talked about are things that are very doable. I think it's a question of basically people coming together, people agreeing on what should be done, whether it's a question of the town changing its regulations, whether it's creating a new program, whether it's having an existing organization do something a little bit differently than they might have been doing. It's all very doable. Montclair is in an enviable position of having the bones to become an age-friendly community, a place where people, as they get older, can stay in their homes and stay in their community and enjoy the assets that it offers. So I hope this is helpful, and I wish you good luck in trying to make this happen. Thank you.